cannot ever be about. If we live our lives thinking about how our lives ought to be, or if we measure our lives so we can describe them, there's a lot of life that is left right there.
諸門葛藤集第88則見識妙心雲門浄土ぬい曰く相も参加これ門正五路見識妙心帝王呼起して曰く観音菩薩千の持ちきたって高病を買う帝王法下して曰く現来たらこれ満寿 Entangling Vines, Case 88. To see form and enlighten the mind. Ummon took the high seat and said, What is it to hear sound and realize the way? To see form and enlighten the mind? Raising his hand, Ummon said, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva brings money and buys a sesame rice cake. Lowering his hand, he said, Actually, it's a dumpling. Case 88. 88 is a lucky number. In the Chinese numerology. So let's see what kind of luck case 88 might bring us today. We just passed middle day. The lunch today was marking halfway of this construct that we have, that this session lasts 5 days. And even though this is a Zen place, we still pay attention to that. It sometimes feels like we are preaching water and drinking wine. You know, oh, you don't need to. There is only this non-duality. So it seems, but then we have our own calendar. And we have these wonderful calligraphies everywhere. And some of them, one of them says, a mountain monastery knows no calendar. And then you see the abbot sitting here and say, oh, it's day 3. How can that be in the same kind of world? And of course, that is the conundrum we are here to solve. This koan speaks about one of the dangerous E words, enlighten. Ooh, how mysterious, enlighten. Very dangerous. But it will help us also dispel some ideas we might have about awakening and enlightenment. So let me repeat some of the things that you might have heard from me from up here or in our encounters face to face or rear to face, whatever way you entered the Doksan room or whatever way you find me welcoming you. Awakening as an idea, or enlightenment as an idea of the achievement of some kind of state, of some kind of plateau or level that is reached and attained and maintained and kept. How likely does that seem in a teaching that always speaks about everything is always changing? It's an excellent marketing tool. But I'm sure on day 2 that marketing is wearing off. Where is it? Is that like bait and switch? I'm not enlightened yet. And so, over a long time, sitting Zazen, and over the time of living lives in the world, living lives in relationship with society, in relationship with human beings, we continuously learn what the nature of this E-word actually is. And as you might guess, it's not anything static. Enlightenment as a state only exists on paper, in many, many books. There is no thing called enlightenment, but there is an activity that we can call awakened or enlightened action. So people are not enlightened, but we can develop and choose to engage in awakened action. So nothing lasts. Even that E word doesn't last. And in this koan we find it's very short, a treasure that can elucidate, make it clear to us what all of this is about. And we are meeting Umon Bunen Zenji. Umon Bunen Zenji, Cloud Gate. Cloud Gate was the name of his monastery. Umon is a very interesting character. We don't necessarily, there's no record that tells us exactly when he was born. But we know that he was born in the town of Jiaxing in the southwest of Shanghai province to a family called Zhang. Apparently, and we can calculate that, we have people here who are good in math, 864 of the Common Era. And we only know that because it is stated in the Umon Monastery on some memorial plates that he was 86 years old when he died in the year 949. So apparently 949 minus 86 is 864. He is a successor to Seppo Gison. And we don't want to speak too much about Umon, his biography and all of that, but let us get a little sense of what his character as a teacher was like and as a practitioner, And since we mentioned awakening, I'm sure you all have heard the story of Umon Bunen Zenji awakening. And it fits really well in here, because he's asking, what is it to hear sound and realize the way? What is it to see form and enlighten the mind? So Umon, as a Zen student, he wanted to go and visit Bokushu, a revered, very advanced monk who actually left the monastery to live by himself because he didn't want to necessarily be a teacher of these big monasteries they had at the time, with hundreds, with thousands of disciples at the time. And so he moved away. Bokushu is quite instrumental in various circumstances relating to Rinzai, the founder of this Rinzai school, and his awakening, because Bokushu was the head monk in the monastery where Rinzai was studying with his teacher, who was Obaku-gyon. And that story I won't tell you, but it's about Rinzai is never going to see the teacher. And so the head monk Bokushu says to him, hey, you've been here for a while, but you haven't gone and seen our abbot. And Rinzai basically said, well, I don't know what to ask. And so Bokushu gave him some advice that worked out for Rinzai. But we won't go into that. So Bokushu must have been quite old when Umon went to see him, because Rinzai died in 867 and Umon was born in 864. So living out there in a hut in the mountains, Bokushu didn't want to deal with any kind of student who just comes and doesn't already have a good foundation of what this Zen business is about. So Umon decided to go. He found the hut and knocked. The slider opens. Bokushu grabs him by the rope. Speak! Speak! Umon just pushed him away, closed the door. So Umon, well, that didn't go so well. There must be something that, let me sit a little more. He went back into the woods, did some more zazen, probably had wonderfully tasting samadhi, and decided, let me try again. Exactly the same thing happened. Speak! Door closes, gone. Umon felt pretty shitty, I can imagine. Failed twice. And so how the mind works, he continued to meditate, but he also figured out, oh yeah, next time I go there, I'll make sure this old man can't close the door on me. So I have a backup plan. If he doesn't like my answer or I can't say anything, I'm gonna stick my leg in there, and that's how I will get in. And same thing happened. He goes, he knocks. Door opens as expected. Speak, speak. Can't say anything. His leg is in the door already. Gets pushed away, the door gets shut, and the leg goes. Umon goes, ah! The door opens. Bokushu says, please come in. So, now this awakening of Umon here, through this physical interaction, through this experience. What is it to hear sound and realize the way? For him, hearing the sound was hearing himself scream when his leg was crushed in that door. To see form and enlighten the mind. So that's a very, very central question for Umon. And when we look around and look at similar kind of awakening experiences, let me just give you a couple of examples here. Awakening experiences that are like precipitated or happen through seeing forms and hearing sounds. For example, in this Shumon Katushu, we have case 8 about Reon Chigan, who studied a long time and one day saw peach blossoms. He was just happened
he happened upon them. And seeing these blossoms of a peach tree, he composed the following verse. For 30 years, I sought a sword master. How many times have leaves fallen and new buds appeared? But since having seen the peach blossoms, I have never doubted again. So let's relate that to what we heard yesterday. For 30 years he was seeking for a sword master. Do you think he was going around to find somebody who teaches him how to use that kind of a sword? Who was he looking for? Manjushri. He was looking for some master. The mind sometimes is called the master, who can teach him how to cut everything into one. But just walking by that peach tree and seeing that, he probably smelled them too. He was cut into one. No doubt was left. Here's another one, case 26 of that Shumon Katushu we are going through here. Chigan's sound of a bamboo. One day, Chigan Chigan was cutting weeds. Other cases or representation of the same case say he was sweeping actually the grounds on this grave of the old national teacher, Nanyo Echu, that was abandoned, but he took care of it. And so either he was sweeping or he was cutting weeds, and a little piece of tile that had fallen off the dilapidated temple roof, or just a little pebble, was moved, and it knocked onto the bamboo and made a sound. And at that moment, suddenly, it struck him. Manjushri's sword in action. He also composed a verse saying the following. This is not the result of practice. Daily activities proclaim the ancient way. No more falling into passive stillness. Wherever I go, I leave no trace. In all conditions, my actions are free. Everywhere, masters of the way speak of this as the highest function. So there are many, many more examples like that. One person was traveling between temples and was going up the mountain, and just before reaching where he could see over the mountain, he was so eager that he went and didn't look so well, and his toe stubbed against a sharp piece of rock. Same thing. So there is something to this that happens. Now, just to warn you, the word here is always accidentally. Okay? So I don't want to see anyone banging themselves again or against objects, running into things, waiting for something like that to happen. It has to be unfolding, and it is accidental. It is not planned. It is not conceived. It is not, as Chigan said, not the result of practice, not the result of planning, and not even the result of dearly, dearly desiring it. Yeah. More about realization. In case 78 of the Blue Cliff Record, the Hikigan Roku, that case is called, I think, Bodhisattvas in the Bath. Sounds interesting. And it speaks about 16 bodhisattvas. And the story that is being picked up here is a story that comes from the Surangama Sutra. Have you ever heard anything about the Surangama Sutra? By now, you know, when I ask that question, of course you should say yes. Yes. Oh, thank you, thank you. And where? This morning, yeah, this morning. The thing with the cookies in it, yeah? Cookie tsulyoyo and so on. Yeah? The Surangama Dharani is that central piece of the Surangama Sutra. That thing. Surangama Sutra. And in here, there's an episode in which 25 bodhisattvas relate their experiences of attaining realization. First, the first one was called Ko Chinyo, and 4 others. So the first 5 disciples of the Buddha stand up and they describe how they attained realization. This Ko Chinyo says, "As for my realization, seeing a sight was the primary cause of it." The second, Kyogon Doji, kyo, smell. Gon is like solemn. Doji is a student of the way. He said, smelling a scent was the cause of my realization. Third, yakuo and yakujo, yaku, like yakuseki, medicine. Yeah, medicine, and o, king, or jo, superb. Speak about tasting as the cause of their realizations. Fourth, Badadabra, and the 15 other bodhisattvas of the present, of the case number 78, stand up and say to the Buddha, "We formerly heard the preaching of the first Buddha and became monks. When it came time for the monks to take a bath, following the rule, we entered the bathhouse. We suddenly experienced realization through the touch of the water. We did not wash off dirt. We did not wash our bodies. We attained peace of mind and the state of no possession. Bodhisattvas in the bath. One really interesting thing with this case is yesterday we encountered the term Shravaka. Shravaka, remember that? And I pointed out that there are 2 Chinese characters here. The first one is, remember anyone? Voice. And the second one was hear. So a hearer of the voice. In this case, somebody who hears the voice of the Dharma as the Shravaka and follows it. The same 2 characters appear right here. Just flipped around. Just flipped around. hearing the sound. What is it to hear the sound and realize the way? It's all together. Now, of course, we can say those senses that we have are gates for us to relate to this immediacy of non-dual. We can't even call it experience. If you call it experience, then there's already a subject and an object. I'm sure all of us have been struck by some sound, a pungent smell, or the sight of something that our brain can't make any sense of or hasn't made sense of yet, or a bodily sensation. It could be blissful, it could be agony. But this immediacy is what is being talked about here. In the past, especially the Rinzai school, had one means of exposing Zen students to that immediacy. It's called the stick, the hitting, or the shouting, the immediacy. I have never seen anyone awaken being beaten or shouted at towards awakening. It has to be accidental in that case too. It cannot be planned. So how many opportunities do we have to experience that? All the time. All the time. It's not waiting for a special moment to occur. The patience of kshanti, of kanti, of perseverance is not the perseverance of a temporal waiting. Sitting zazen in the mudra of the person who wants to awaken. Are we there yet? No, it's a completely different patience. It's the patience of completely accepting what is. That's non-temporal. There's no time involved. It's just this, 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 this. Umon also had a really annoying kind of shtick, let's call it. He would ask a question. What is it to hear sound and realize the way? To see form and enlighten the mind? He would not wait for anyone to answer. He'd always give the answer himself. So here, what is he doing? Raising his hand, he says, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva brings money and buys a sesame rice cake. Then lowering his hand, he says, actually, it's a steam bun. One of those steamed rice buns. How do we say that in Chinese? Manto. Japanese, manju. German, Dampfnudel. Because it's steam. Dampf is steam and noodle is some kind of a dough. Yeah? Now, what is this with pointing up and pointing down? It has a very specific meaning, actually. It's a meaning that is in here that came from a sutra. A sutra we haven't heard about yet. But a sutra that has again this Dainichi Nyorai, Vairocana Buddha, and Manjushri in it. And that sutra is called, in Japanese, is called Daihoko Butsu Keigon Kyo, usually known as the Keigon Kyo, Avatamsaka Sutra, the flower ornament scripture. It has 39 chapters. And now, of course, the most important chapter and the oldest chapter is chapter number 39. And it's very interesting what this chapter tells us. So this arm gesture of raising one's hand, the arm up, and of lowering down goes to one part in this chapter 39. Chapter 39 speaks about something that we, I think, can really well relate to. Manjushri is instructing the layman, the lay human being, Sudana. In Japanese, Zensai Doji. So Zensai Doji is instructed as a layperson by Manjushri to go and find spiritual friends that can help him become a bodhisattva. So this chapter 39 describes how this Zensai Doji, this disciple of Manjushri, goes on this pilgrimage and encounters 53 bodhisattvas who teach him. 53. And they are all spiritual friends. The word for spiritual friend is Kalyana Mitra. Kalyana Mitra is a wonderful concept, a wonderful description of what we should all be aware of. Zen Chishiki. Zen Chishiki in Japanese, Kalyana Mitra. We all ought to be each other's Kalyana Mitra. Spiritual friends that help each other on this way of bodhisattvahood, of going there. We watch out for each other. If one of us falls asleep and falls over, we rush over to pick them up and see if they are okay. If someone does not appear at one of our meetings, somebody will go looking for them to find out, are they okay? And hopefully it's just a very wonderful explanation. Well, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear the bell, or I was sleeping, whatever it is. And the Kalyana Mitra says, oh, I'm glad you are okay. When we are in any kind of distress, and we all are in distress, that's why we come here. The mere action of sitting together, next to each other, receiving tea, drinking together, eating together, chanting together, creates this spiritual friendship that is so important. Those of us who have done many sessions know from just sitting next to a person you have never met before, just by sharing this wonderful bond of Kalyana Mitras happens. And all of that happens on that level where Zen as an activity in the pre-verbal way happens, where we human beings connect with intuition, in the world of intuition, in the Chokka no Sekai, where there is no self-reference or reference to the other that comes and hinders us from freely making space for each other. It's a wonderful thing to think about. When we speak about no self, that just means we let that self that always wants to be in the driver's seat just go, take a drive. And it makes so much space, not only for us, but for everybody. Everybody. So this Zenzai Doji, encounters teacher or Kalyana Mitra, friend number 8. Friend number 8. What's his name? His name is Bhishmotara Nirgosha, Bimokugusha Sennin. It doesn't matter what the name is. Let's call him Ben. He's the 8th of the 53 teachers in this chapter that's called Entry into the Realm of Dharma, or Entry into the Realm of Reality. So what Ben did, he raised his hand and touched Zenzai Doji at his head. And in that moment, Sudana saw all the Buddha lands and all the countless Buddhas and was exposed to that non-dual samadhi of everything is one, but there is consciousness. So that is where the raising of the hand comes from. And as Ben takes his hand down again, Sudana appears again. Space and time reappear. Once again, in the everyday world, standing in front of his Kalyana Mitra. Beautiful story. So what Umon is doing is referring to that experience when he holds up his hand and when he tells us about Avalokiteshvara. Raising his hand, Umon said, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva brings money and buys a sesame rice cake. I wonder what kind of wallet he had or she had. Where did Kanon keep her money? Bitcoin. Right, something like that. Crypto, Dharma currency, right? And buys a sesame rice cake. So there must be concession stands in non-duality. And you can buy sesame rice cakes or whatever is the most delicious treat that you can think of. And apparently Umon really liked sesame rice cakes. I think in his collected works, in all the koans, he speaks about sesame rice cakes appear 93 times. So he must have really... So what it says, Umon says, I dig sesame rice cakes. It's the most delicious thing for him, even though it's fairly simple. There is a whole koan about it. Koan number 77, again in the Blue Cliff record, in the Hikigan Roku. And guess what the title is? Umon's rice cake. Here's Engo's introduction to that.
Very, very interesting. Just recall what we talked about. If you work in the upward, transcendent way, you lead others by the nose. You are like a hawk taking a dove. If you work in the downward way, you place yourself at others' disposal, like a tortoise in its shell. And if any of you come forward and say to me, there is originally no up and no down, what use is it to talk that way? I will say to you, I know you are living among dead spirits. Now tell me, how do you distinguish black from white, light from dark? And then Engo waits a little bit and says, if there is a rule, follow it. If not, follow a precedent. Look at this koan. And here comes the main case. A monk asked Umon, what is the teaching that transcends the Buddha and ancestors? Umon answered, a sesame bun. Wow. A sesame bun. Seicho's verse, talking about transcendence. Human people come up with countless puzzles. Just look. It's all patched up, full of holes. Umon closed the gaps, stopped the holes with his sesame bun. But problems still remain, just to torture you. So clearly the sesame bun was an expression that Umon would use to express this. Avalokiteshvara brings money and buys a sesame rice cake. You don't get that sesame bun for nothing. Even Kanon, that hears all sounds of the world, accidentally awakens. Has to buy that sesame bun. We all have to put our presence on the spot in order to have the opportunity to disappear and be fully struck by what is. And then we'll come down again. Actually, it's a dumpling. Sounds like a letdown. But that again, only our thinking mind can be let down. Because we have the idea of this delicious sesame cake we cannot yet afford. So I would say a dumpling in the hand is better than a sesame cake we don't have. And then you come here, and what is the only way to manifest true Zen understanding with this?
Eat
Eh.
Become it.
Eh. That is not eating. That is not devouring.
That is just... Please take good care of not getting stuck on the level of about. What Seicho said in his introduction to K77 of the Blue Cliff record. If any of you come forward and say there originally is no upward or downward, if you say anything, if you talk about, and of course I have to say, if you talk about non-duality, you know, somebody should slap you in the face. And since I talk about non-duality, I have to do that myself. But it's only offered. As a pointer. It cannot ever be about. If we live our lives thinking about how our lives ought to be, or if we measure our lives so we can describe them, there's a lot of life that is left right there. A lot of agony, a lot of suffering, a lot of torture, as Seicho Juken says here. The steam bun we have here is not different from the sesame bun that Avalokiteshvara bought. And it is not about comparison. It is not about anything. When we sit here, that is it. Not more, not less. The moment we want to be somewhere else, the chasm opens. Our lover now is on the other side of this chasm we cannot get across. Bringing everything together, unification, separation, unification, separation, being born, disappearing, reappearing, over and over again. This is the game in which we are. And learning to be truly in accord with which direction it is just now is the presence that we are developing here. There is no guarantee that what comes is to our liking. But it is just so. And once we are at the ability to practice patience with it being just so, it has the quality of a thoroughly lived life. And as I express it sometimes, life is an acquired taste. Taste, smell, see, feel. And the only thing we need for that is show up. Be there. Not with Avalokiteshvara, not anywhere else, but just here. Let's do it together.